Saram and welcome Mr. Ted Henry to Tryst with Divinity, our series on Radio Sai. You are in the studios of Radio Sai in Prashantinalayam. When I saw you in Kulwant Hall other day, I was reminded of your talk in the Divine Presence in 2008. You spoke on the occasion of Christmas and I remember the way you started your talk. It was very powerful. You said, "We are among the luckiest people on the face of the earth on this Christmas day. We get to be on Christmas Day with Jesus Himself." And it came out with so much of intensity and force and power. The crowd just burst out into an applause. I just heard that again yesterday, and I want to ask you, when and how did this conviction, such deep conviction, happen in your life?
Well, I'm 67 now, so it took me about 64 years to get to that conviction. First of all, Vishu, I want to say thank you for inviting me to be here. It's highly unusual, almost unheard of, for me to be sitting on this side of the camera. In my profession as a television journalist, I've conducted maybe 10,000 interviews. Anybody who works for 44 years will conduct 10,000 interviews. But coming to Baba, that's where my real important life started, doing interviews as Sai devotees. And it's such a thrill and a privilege to hear people's stories, and to be asked to give my story puts the shoe on the other foot, so it's a little different for me. Those words, that passion, came from the worst week of my life, the worst Christmas of my life, when I was told that I had to speak from my heart on Christmas Day in the Divine Presence. I froze. If I would have had my car here, I would have driven home to America
Oh my God.
to avoid that. My wife and I had tremendous arguments. She wanted me to speak from the depths of my heart, and I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to get there. I've never been asked to do that before. So slowly but surely, over 3 days of writing rough drafts of speeches, she would go, "Rip! That's not good. That's not who you are. That's not your truth. Try again." And I'd stay up all night and write another one. And rip! She'd tear it in two and throw it away.
Speaking is nothing new to you. Why were you so hesitant?
It's not that I was hesitant. It's just that most people live in some form of self-control, self-editing, or even fear. And what you're fearful of is to reveal your true self outwardly. Maybe fearful of being ridiculed, maybe fearful of making a fool of yourself, maybe fearful of making a mistake. So she kept pushing me to speak my ultimate truth about Sri Satya Sai Baba in front of Sri Satya Sai Baba. And so finally, at the middle of the night, before Christmas, it came to me that this is among the most important moments in the history, not just of the world, but of the universe, of the whole cosmos, to be there literally in the figurative, literal, physical presence of Jesus Christ Himself, of Baba, of Moses, of Abraham, of Isaiah, of Rama, of Krishna, of all the spiritual presence in the history of human record and beyond. This was the pinnacle. This is the ultimate. And that registered on me, and that's why I said it the way I did, because I felt that strongly about it on Christmas Day in Baba's presence.
Fantastic. So you said it was a long process of getting there,
Yes.
and articulating that was another challenge. May I ask you, how and when did this process start?
This process started when I was given the false impression that I was doing seva for people around the world who love Sai Baba. The false impression I had was that I was going out and interviewing people for what Sojourns, that's the name of the banner of the service that we try to provide for people, heart-to-heart interviews, just like you've done for years with Radio Sai. I'm a competitor of yours. But I'm so small it doesn't make any difference. But the stories are important. They're equally as important as your stories. How a person's life is transformed, and to have a person explain that is of great value to other people who might be watching or listening on Radio Sai. So I thought, what a great service we're doing for Baba, and I'm going to talk about sojourns. That's going to be the point of my message on Christmas Day, and to thank Baba for giving me this vehicle, to allowing me to be the vehicle to help people's stories be converted. After 3 days of soul searching at a very deep level, what I said in my talk later on Christmas Day was, first Baba hooks you,
Yes.
and then he cooks you. He hooked me 15 years ago, and he's been cooking me for more than 14 years.
That is what I would like you to share today. How he hooked you, and then how this cooking, this chiseling process has happened the last 15 years.
All right. I'll just finish this little bit about the talk on Christmas Day. When I realized I had the talk I wanted and my wife was happy with it, is when I realized that it wasn't that I was doing seva for Baba by recording these 175-hour-long video interviews with devotees. It was that he was giving me the gift of slow, steady awareness to who my higher self is. And those interviews were not primarily recorded for the benefit of anybody who saw them. Those interviews were primarily recorded for my benefit. They're what brought me to Baba. Baba has told me over the course of 15 years, good man, good husband, good person, doubting Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think, ooh, that hurts. Baba, I'm not a doubting Thomas. Well, we all have doubt in us. And just the other day, I learned a valuable lesson from a young man who's a mystic, I would say, who loves Baba. And he says, Ted, it's okay to doubt, but get to the point where you begin to doubt the doubt. Doubt the doubt, and the doubt will soon go away. Well, in my walk with Baba, it's gone away, and it totally went away on that Christmas Day when I realized, after being asked to speak before him, what my true message was. Not that I was thanking Baba for the seva, but that I was thanking Baba that he gave me these people to share these stories with me for my benefit. And if anybody else could benefit, that's fine. But he was working on me.
And you call this the boomerang Leela.
This is the boomerang Leela. I thought I was casting the boomerang out to serve you for your doubts and for your spiritual edification and you. It's only for me. It all came back to me. You caught that word?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a
So
wonderful-
it gives me chills right now to think about it because I didn't think I had a message worth mentioning in front of Baba.
And in the same talk you mentioned, addressing Baba, you said, Baba, you are the Christ consciousness. And then you added, you are my Christ consciousness.
Yeah. There is only one. You and I could have a healthy debate for 4 hours regarding Baba's primary lessons for us all. And if I asked you spontaneously to give me 4 of them, you would give me 4 right off the top of your head. For me, there's only one. I'd give you the same answer over and over and over again. It's Advaita. It's oneness. It's that you too are the divine, and that this impenetrable, seemingly impenetrable Maya must be penetrated. We must pierce it. It has to be. And if we don't do it this lifetime, maybe we'll do it the next 3,000 lifetimes. But one day it will be penetrated, and we will see the myth of who we believe ourselves to be. And his lesson is so clear about that, over and over again. And people will say, Ted, I disagree with you violently. I strongly disagree with you. You know, seva, namasmarna, bhajans, helping the poor, all of these other projects of huge merit are equally as important. Well, in my view, they're hugely important. But they all go away when you realize that we're all living the dream of who we think we are. And when Baba says, and I can't remember his precise words, let's say when somebody's in an awful car accident and their 2 children are killed, or when war breaks out here, or another tsunami takes the west coast of America, or when somebody does something awful against their spouse or their child, and in a moment of repentance they say, Baba, please forgive me, I have sinned, I have done wrong, I have harmed people. His response is, don't worry, for I have willed it. Everything is his will, no matter how beautiful, no matter how awful it is, to help us to awaken to 2 items. How big our ego controls us, number 1, and number 2, which is actually number 1, to awaken from the Maya to Atma.
I'm reminded of the example that Swami gives of a dog which goes into this house of mirrors. And as the dog animates and barks, and all these reflections of the dog also bark, and he gets agitated. What is happening? This, I'm not doing this. Who are these people barking at me? And then he gets more and more agitated. Then he breaks the mirror, and now he finds there are more dogs.
There's a million dogs
Million
now.
dogs now. So until he realizes that he has to be calm, then everything else also calms down.
That dog is me. I had a spiritual teacher of mine tell me the other day, a good person. I said, you know, my wife is so sattvic. She's so beautiful. She's so wonderful. I'm so rajasic. And this person told me, don't ever worry about your rajasic nature. It causes you to do your work. It's the driving force behind doing your work. Remember to keep life in balance to the best of your ability, but use the rajasic part of your life to do the work for Baba.
Yeah, I think everybody is a combination of
Yeah.
all the three: Rajasic, Sattvic, and Tamasic.
Yeah.
And we are different in permutation and combination of all these three. And at different points in time, we are one
Yes.
guna is predominant, is
Yeah.
prominent in our
Right.
faculties. So, I want to get back to where we started from. I want you to share about your journey, how and when it began with Baba.
Well, I'm 67 years old. I was raised Catholic. I won't go through my whole life, but I was a very good little Catholic boy. I always loved Jesus. I always loved drawing closer to God. And then, like many people, we call it high school. I'm not sure what you call it here. And then college. Young people in America tend to fall away from their religion. It's a good thing. It's a good thing to fall away from your religion so that you come back on your own terms one day to what your true spiritual values.
You do that search within.
You do the search within, yeah. It would be not as effective if people forced you to go to church every Sunday all through those years. Better for you to fall away and come back on your own. And in 1968, maybe a couple years before you were born, a couple of decades before you were born,
Yes.
I joined what was called the Peace Corps. It's an American Seva organization that sends young men, 20, 22, around the world. And I lived in Paraguay in South America for 2 years on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And the purpose is to do good, to help people down there, struggling people. In that period, 1968 to 1970, I was looking through an old magazine, so old the cover was torn off. I didn't know the date.
Mm-hmm.
I was hungry to read anything. And so it didn't matter. I'm turning page 50, 51, 52. There's a picture of Sai Baba. It's about this big. And a little inscription under it, and some devotees from America dressed in their whites. And I was very critical.
Mm-hmm.
I said, what fools they are.
Mm-hmm.
This is a cult. I feel for these young men. I feel for them. They're being duped by this Swami. Well, that was my ignorance. That was my projection. That was a 100% incorrect assessment on my part. But it was my first peek, first glimpse of Sai Baba, and I've never forgotten it. So he actually allowed me to see his form and to read his name in 1968, 69. And then fast forward, 1992, I had a crisis in my life. Many people do. In 1989, my marriage ended, and I decided I'm going to start the search for my true self because I thought I had it all worked out, and my wife of 16 years left me, and I couldn't figure out why. So it really was, in hindsight, one of the biggest blessings in my life. I went to a minister whom I regarded very highly in my town after 6 weeks of not telling a soul that I was getting divorced. And I said, Ken, please pray for me. My wife is leaving me. Would you pray to God for my marriage to be saved? And he stumped me. He stunned me. He turned to me and he said, Ted, I don't know that I can do that. I don't know that that's what God wants for you. He didn't know Baba, but he did know that we're not the doer. And that I was going through divorce for a reason. I was going through pain for a reason. My wife too. But I was going through it for my own reasons. And slowly but surely, Baba came into my life in a way that became more meaningful. I saw him in 1968. In 1992, 3 years after my divorce, I went around the world as a journalist, and I only had one meeting lined up. The rest of it was just sort of an ad lib trip. And that one meeting was with Mother Teresa in Calcutta. And in Calcutta, I spent 3.5 days. She allowed me to feed the dying men. And I stayed in the home of devotees of Mother Teresa who made the food for Friday for 1 day a week. And they hosted me for 3.5 days. And as I was leaving, they said, now that you've come halfway around the world to visit one of the spiritual icons of your Catholic tradition, one day we hope and pray you come back to meet our spiritual icon, our spiritual teacher. His name is Sri Satya Sai Baba.
Okay.
And I said, oh, I know who that person is. I remember just seeing his name and his picture. And oh, yes, he's very, very dear to us all. Those of us who love Baba, our lives are forever changed. In fact, he stayed in the room you stayed in when you were here. He came to our home, and we hosted him in the room you just slept in for the last 3 days. So I figured, well, that's interesting, but I thought nothing more of it. And then in 1997, when I met Jody Cleary, who's my wife and partner and does the work of Soul Journeys with me, the very first day I met her, she said, well, I'm sorry I won't be seeing you again. You're a nice man, and I'm going to India, and I'm going to go visit my teacher, and you've never heard of him before, so it's been very nice knowing you. And I said, well, try me. Who is your teacher? What's his name? How do you know I've never heard of him before? Sri Satya Sai Baba. I know who Sai Baba is. So she came back from India. She had some profound, miraculous occurrences with Baba here, and the rest is history. We got married, and I started coming to Baba and started to have profound experiences here as I do today. I'm not a person who sees auras. I don't have Baba speak audibly in my ear. I don't have too many dreams where he comes to me. He has allowed me to have several, maybe up to 6 face-to-face encounters and interviews with him, made a beautiful ring for me, and I have him in my heart always. But I found out that I didn't need to have these extraordinary experiences that so many people here seem to have. What I experience, and if anybody's watching this who's never been here, now that this is my first time to be here in Prashanti post his Mahasamadhi, I would invite others to come too, because everyone I talk to experiences the same thing I do. You get up in the morning, you go to breakfast, or you skip breakfast. You go to darshan, or you skip darshan. You stay in the ashram, or you go out of the ashram. It doesn't matter. You run into people and experiences and stories that just knock you for a loop. This is very special turf. The grounds here are filled with extraordinary vibrations that even with a man like me, they reach me with the people I come into contact with. So I challenge anybody who's watching this who's never been here before, even though they might not see Sai Baba in the form walking through the hall, to come here with no expectations, but to just be in this stew, just to sit in this stew for 2 or 3 days or 2 or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 months as we are, and let it happen. It'll change, it'll contribute to the change in your life that goes on forever. And let me just make this one last point. In my following Sai Baba, I learned the value of being in school. We are all in school, except this is a school of reaching oneness with God. And in this school, there's no summer vacation, there's no recess, there's no lunch period, there's no graduation, there's no diploma. It's school, school, school. And the day you take your last breath and die, you're in school. And after your last breath and after you've died, your classwork continues. So if you see it that way, then people must, if not come here, must realize that every day they get up, they have to focus on the value of that day's lessons. Maybe they'll be in a car accident. Maybe somebody will give them $1,000. Maybe they'll get fired from their boss. Maybe somebody will come over and do a real nice loving gesture for them. All of it educates us to what's real in our lives.